Today I want to show you how to install these Harley Davidson universal saddlebag locks multi-fit on this Indian soft sort of hard in between material, soft lid, hard case saddlebag. And within this kit you'll see that you have a couple bezels, different bezels, some little bolts and nuts, 2 keys, 2 lock cylinders, and 2 receivers. And so everything, if you need the number for this kit, universal saddlebag lock kit, and I have already installed one of these on this side. I'm opting for an option where when these are locked you don't see them underneath, and that installation went really well, I think. So go ahead and show you how to do that over on this side. One of the things that I did when I installed this the first time was just took a look at where my center hole needed to be located to make sure that this connected correctly. So I just did a little tick mark from the edge of the bag to that center mark. You certainly, after you've done this, you could obviously measure that. I just had this piece of wood available that you'll see how we use, so I went ahead and used it. So the lock assembly, the cylinder, the receiver, here, twisting it is pretty much simulating what the key would do. So first I want to use the front part of this to go ahead and set up what's going to map through to the back part of this. So the first thing that we have to do is drill a pilot hole that will go ahead and be the starting point of where we put in our 5/8 inch spade bit to go ahead and make the hole so that this item can go ahead and plug through so that the cylinder can come through. So I'm going to use the bezel off of the inner portion to do my setup and measurement, just kind of taking this apart to show you the basic mechanics of it, how all of these pieces go together, how everything functions. And pretty nice system. I think that, obviously if someone wants to get into one of these bags, they could just cut it up. Probably wouldn't care too much about how it ends up aesthetically. But I think installing these is working to take care of our people that are opportunists and want to capitalize on something being left unprotected. You'll see my helper cat come in and out from time to time. He's a good little 6-month chartreux. His name's Teddy. Sometimes he takes off with parts and pieces of my project, so he's a clever little dude. So I'm just generally making sure I have the correct height based on where this one was. And then the big thing, I just want to make sure that when this strap falls down naturally that it's covered, or that the lock is covered. So I like this positioning here. I'm going to go ahead and mark that as my center point, where I'll go ahead and drill through. I think that'll end up pretty nice there. So on the instructions for this, it's got pretty nice instructions that you can go through. step by step. One of the things that it recommends is clamping wood so that you don't tear the material, so that the drill bit doesn't grab and pull and tear up the leather. So my thought on that was to go ahead and sort of sandwich the leather in between some wood. Hi, helper. And for these smaller bit sizes, these kind of pinch clamps can work okay. When we do the 5/8 inch spade bit, we'll definitely want to transition over into a clamp. So I'm going to go ahead and drill this here. And I hadn't really drilled leather before. I came in a little lower on my mark intentionally because this strap is up so high. It's going to be negligible for that guy. Probably end up looking just right. So now when I put the bag back down, I go ahead and secure everything. And this is the way the bag's going to sit. Then I'm going to go ahead and just do my pilot hole again straight through here. So I've got a good hole there. And I think what I'll go ahead and do, I'm just going to go ahead and clamp on. This is a little bit out of their recommended sequence, but it doesn't really matter. The lid and the case are worked on a little bit separately. So here we're working with a little bit more torque force from the 5/8 inch spade bit, and I want to make sure that I have this secured as good as possible. So change out from my spade bit. Stay 5/8 inch is what they recommend. Worked pretty well on the other side. The only real thing I noticed was that it's important to clean this up before you move forward with it. The edges of this are going to be a little rough, as you might expect. You can see how it sort of twisted it there, which is okay. I waited to clean this up on this one until after I had installed it, but I definitely left a mental note for myself that said, you know, clean this up before I install the next one. And since I'll be installing this on another saddlebag as well on the other side of the bike, I just want to make sure that my technique is good, because this guy, this piece with the wires, is going to install by coming through here, and these pieces that drop over, they have to go inside there and seat. So it's kind of a it totally works if you get that leather cleaned out okay. And this actually has definitely gotten a lot better to clean it out at this phase rather than putting the receiver in and then cleaning out around it. So pro tip, clean the hole out before you put the tumbler in. Just kind of gently cleaning that out, and that looks pretty good to me. The big thing then on the lid, of course, is that we have no plastic behind this, so our reinforcement is pretty much non-existent. So the block of wood behind this and on top of it is going to be essential. And I really want to try to center this hole on my drill hole. Get that in position. I'm giving it some pretty good clamp force because I just really do not want that leather to spin around in there and tear. That would be a significant $500 bummer. And I don't like those, so let's go ahead and it's looking generally pretty on center. And I like to take it easy, kind of starting it slow and see how it's cutting. Kind of, all things considered, sort of tearing the leather. It actually ends up making a fairly decent hole. Still kind of clean this up a little bit. Just don't want to have too much in the way of the tumbler, so that looks pretty good to me. Every time I'm tempted to pull something on this, I know I should cut it because it's not like fabric and it could do damage by pulling it. I've been pretty pleased though with how well the drilling actually works on the leather, though I never really drilled leather. I'd used more of this leather punch, which I have set to their recommended drill size. They recommend 3/16, so so 4/16 would be a fourth, so I'm going to go ahead and use my my setting here that really what we're trying to do is get a hole where these screws can comfortably, or bolts can comfortably pass through. So almost any of these would work. And when I put in my previous one, I did drill it, but I don't think that's entirely the best way to do it. So I think if you can get a leather punch, they're good for a lot of other things, and I think it's going to work a lot better in this application. So here I'm just going ahead. I would kind of like it to be generally level. It's going to be covered either way, and I'll go ahead and once I have that sized up there, I'll just make my marks. I think I may have been off center a little bit. Actually, that'll be just about right once the leather flexes. And the nice thing about these bezels that we're using is that they really sandwich things together pretty nicely. So, okay. Thought that would have worked better. Oh, there we go. And I just like to make sure that this will definitely fit through there. That's nice. And that one's good. And we'll do the same thing on this guy, except here we will have to drill it, obviously, because we're going through the plastic casing. So I'm going to go ahead and set the bezel on here and go ahead and mark it. Looks pretty good to me. What I'm going to do here is just sandwich this guy solidly onto here. So I'm just trying to resist that tearing possibility that happens when the leather gets wrapped up around the drill bit. And clean up here. This should push through and work pretty well on this one. So this receiver and the tumbler that goes into it. Receiver's going to go back here, and then we're going to go ahead and use this bezel, and then we'll screw that in. The little bit bigger holes here are really helpful because just like when if you're putting on like a doorknob or something, it's nice to have a little wiggle room when you're trying to push through and find that point of contact for your other screw hole. One of the things I might end up doing on these screws is putting some Loctite. I might just use some blue Loctite, but I don't think they necessarily need it for sure. It's not discussed in the manual. So you can see here inevitably a little bit of leather. It's kind of trying to find its way out, so we can clean that out. I just sort of want to test that this has the room that it needs to go in, and it seems like it's a little tight, so probably need to go ahead and clean this up a little bit. Generally, it looks like that'll work. It's a little tight, but you know, with usage over time, of course, that'll wear out. Wear in. This one, then we're going to bring up through, and then we'll be attaching the bezel. This bezel that has the bolts welded onto it, and we'll go ahead and put this in here. And then we'll just naturally attach those bolts as they come through. And then I found that I had to use a flat wrench on here to gain the access I needed. I probably could have found a thin-walled socket to slip over this, but this worked fine. And effectively then, that's the install. Pretty straightforward. I generally, you know, so far I like the way they function. You know, they seem to be, you know, they definitely hold the bag closed, which is a good thing. you know, is the concealment, because I didn't really want to have a lock system that screamed lock, you know. So here I feel like that's a pretty nice solution to the problem of not having locks installed on the bag. So $1,000 saddlebags, $100 lock kit, and it's a Harley lock kit, so I have a little Harley on my bike, kind of bringing the Indian and the Harley back together again. Thanks, I hope that helps some of you out. I couldn't find this anywhere, so I thought it would be helpful to the community to make it. If you have any comments or anything, please feel free to chime in. And, you know, happy riding. Let's get out there.